documentary filmmaker, published writer, anti-sexist activist, and lecturer. Since 1993, he has been using his craft, his voice, and his writings to broaden and deepen how people think about gender, race, sex, violence, music, and visual media. As an activist, Byron has served as a gender violence prevention educator. The former Northeast University football quarterback was also a founding member of the Mentors in Violence Prevention program, the leading college-based rape and domestic violence prevention initiative for college and professional athletics. Hurt also served as an associate director for the first gender violence prevention program in the United States Marine Corps. Hurt began his professional film career with I Am Man, Black Masculinity in America. His most popular documentary to date, however, is Hip Hop Beyond Beats and Rhymes. Because of his work, Hurt has lectured at hundreds of campuses, presented at numerous professional conferences, and trained thousands of young men and women on cutting-edge issues. He has completed his newest documentary, Soul Food Junkies, a film about the history and legacy of soul food for PBS. You can visit his website at www.bhurt.com. You can friend him on Facebook, and you can also follow him on Twitter. Please join me in welcoming Byron Hurt.
Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, good. Good morning.
Morning.
Right, I'm going to try and rock this out without the microphone. So just kind of hang with me. And hopefully we'll have a really enjoyable morning and an engaging morning, and a morning that's going to stimulate a lot of dialogue and conversation, and hopefully will help us to think about the things that we can do as individuals right here on this campus, in the campus community, to make a difference right where we are in terms of helping to prevent all forms of physical and sexual violence against girls and women, and to raise awareness. This might be a little hot spot over here. To raise awareness and to change the peer climate, the male peer climate, which makes violence against women a socially acceptable thing amongst men, boys and men. And I'm hoping to have a great time this evening. I want to thank Grand Valley State for inviting me to be here this morning. Congratulations on the grant that you received. For the Women's Center, that's major. Thank you. Congratulations. We need more resources. You know, I think anyone who has done this work and has worked in this field knows and understands that this is an issue that does not receive as much attention or the resources necessary to actually do the work, and the people who actually commit themselves to doing this work are underpaid, undervalued, under-resourced, and are really doing it because of the passion that they have for really sort of making a difference and helping people and trying to create change in the world. So that's a significant thing. Thank you all for being here. We have a packed room, so give your hand, give yourself a hand. My name is Byron Hurt, and I'm a documentary filmmaker. I'm a writer, I'm a lecturer, I'm an anti-sexist activist. I do a lot of things, but I'm very, very passionate about making documentary films, and I'm also very passionate about social justice issues, particularly gender violence and gender violence prevention. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to just give you some background about my story, how I got to the place where I am today, and share with you some of my work as a filmmaker, but also lead a couple of exercises that will get us all involved in talking and thinking about these issues in ways that will hopefully promote some level of understanding and sensitivity and awareness and compassion. Teresa mentioned that we all come from different places. We all have various levels of experience talking about this issue or dealing with this issue. Some people may have been doing this work for many years. Some people this may be their very first conversation about how to prevent or how to stop or acknowledge gender violence as an issue. And so I want to be cognizant that people are coming from different places in the room. So I got my start working on this issue when I met a man by the name of Jackson Katz. Has anybody heard of Jackson? Anyone? Just okay. Many people in the room have heard of Jackson. Well, I met Jackson a long time ago, and I remember my very first meeting with Jackson. I was invited to go over to the Center for the Study of Sports Society in Boston to meet with and discuss this new project that Jackson had created called the Mentors in Violence Prevention Program. Has anybody heard of Mentors in Violence Prevention? Okay, cool. So they were looking for a male, a former athlete, to be their guinea pig, basically. To be the first person, the first male, to go around the country and to talk to athletes, male athletes specifically, about the ways in which we could be a part of the solution, the way that men could be proactive bystanders in the face of physical and sexual assault against girls and women, and also to talk about and deconstruct the issues around manhood and masculinity, as well as homophobia, okay? So I was a young boy at that time when I met Jackson. Jackson had this long, curly red hair, and anybody who knows Jackson knows that he talks really fast, and he's very passionate, and he has this real encyclopedic knowledge of gender issues. I mean, he's a brilliant man. And I remember he sat me down in the room, this little tiny office at Northeastern, and he told me about his vision for this program that he had, and that he wanted to figure out ways to involve men in the conversation about how we can reduce violence against women. And he felt that athletes, former athletes, current athletes, had a certain level of masculine credibility that would enable other men to pay attention and to listen to a conversation about manhood and masculinity. And his goal really was to sort of institutionalize gender violence prevention on college campuses, on athletic teams, high schools, colleges, and basically all over the country. And so when I sat down, I listened to Jackson. Now mind you, I was, your typical guy. I played football at Northeastern University. I was about to graduate from college. My major was journalism. I did not have a real background in gender studies at all. I was a member, and still am a member, of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. So I was pretty rude to the press. Okay. That's inside baseball talk. So I was a pretty typical guy, and I participated in guy culture. I wasn't an abusive guy. I wasn't physically abusive. I think that I did benefit from male privilege, obviously. I played football. I played football from the time that I was 7 years old. I played quarterback. I believe that I enjoyed many of the trappings that come along with being a college quarterback. I never really had to question certain things about rape and sexual assault. I was never challenged by any male to confront a guy about his sexist or abusive behavior, even though if I saw it, I may have known it was not cool, but I was never, no one ever really gave me permission to actually confront another man about his behavior or his attitudes about girls and women. And I never really had to seriously confront my own attitudes about girls and women. I never had to really confront patriarchy. I never really had to confront, some of my own sexist thinking, until I sat down with Jackson. So anyway, Jackson told me about this program. I thought that the program was going to be a violence prevention program, not a gender violence prevention program, okay? That's a big difference, right? So when he sort of laid out his grand vision and his plans for the program, and for me, if I were to accept this opportunity to work with the program and work with him, I was really nervous about that. I really was. I did not know what my male friends were going to think about me if I decided to take this on. I was concerned about what my teammates were going to think about me, what my fraternity brothers would think about me, what my father would think about me, or my male uncles and male cousins. Like I said, I didn't go to school to become an anti-sexist activist. All right? That wasn't my career goal or ambition. But when Jackson spoke to me, he spoke to me about issues that were, in my opinion, very real and that hit home to me. Now, I did not grow up in a home where my father was physically abusive to my mother, but my home was very patriarchal. My father was clearly the head of the household. My father always pretty much had the final word on significant issues. My father was also emotionally abusive toward my mother. I never saw my father physically assault my mother, but I do remember and witness my father treat my mother in ways that made it very clear that she was less than, okay? And I saw how that hurt her, and as a young boy, it hurt me to see my mother being mistreated by my father. And so, I think I had a built-in sensitivity to these issues based on what I experienced growing up as a young boy, as a young man. And to be quite honest with you, I'm sure that I internalized a lot of that sexist, patriarchal thinking. And I know, as I said earlier, that I benefited from that. And I also knew, as Jackson spoke to me, and as he was sort of speaking to my heart, really, I knew that I had witnessed really problematic behavior from men in my life and in my world. Could have been cousins, my teammates, my fraternity members, my coaches. So I knew when Jackson spoke about the prevalence of violence against women and the role that men play, and the fact that men often get a pass, and that, you know, most of the times we tend to blame the victim. I knew what Jackson was saying was real, and I knew that he had a point. But I still did not know if I was the person to take on this challenge or responsibility. I was really being controlled by my fears. And Jackson asked me two questions that I will never forget. He said, Byron, do you consider yourself to be a leader? I played quarterback for most of my life. I held leadership positions on campus, you know, as a student. So that was a really easy question for me to answer. So I said, yes, I do consider myself to be a leader. And then he asked me another question that no one ever asked me before. White, black, Latino, Asian, no one had ever asked this question. He said, Byron, in what ways does men's violence against women benefit the African American community? I was like, wow. Thought for a minute. And after pondering the question, my only response to Jackson could be, it doesn't. Right? It can't. And he went on to talk about the high level of violence against women that are being committed against African American women across the country. He also made it very clear that this was not an issue that was exclusive to the African American community, that this was an issue that transcended race, that transcended culture, that transcended class, educational attainment, what have you. But he said that if you took this opportunity, you could really become a leader in an area where there's a void of leadership, where there are not many men who are speaking out in the African American community or otherwise about this issue. And that was very deep and that was very powerful to me because I'm a very proud African American man. What's up? Like what are you doing? I'm a very proud African American man. I love my community. I grew up admiring the courage and the strength and the resolve and the activism of African American leaders, you know, who stood up and fought against Jim Crow, the history of racism, legalized discrimination. And so I felt like this was an area where I could make a difference in the world. And so I thought about it, but I was still a little concerned. I was a little afraid still about what other people would think about me. I went home, I called my parents, I spoke to my mother and my father, I told them about this new potential opportunity. My mother was ecstatic about this. Okay? She was very thrilled that, you know, this was something that I was considering doing. My father was a lot more reticent about me taking this job. He didn't really understand why I would take this job. It had nothing to do with what I went to school. He didn't really see it as a big issue. And so so on some level, some of my fear sort of came true, right? About how my father would respond, you know, about me accepting this challenge. And then the next day, I went to a workshop that was facilitated by Jackson. Jackson invited me to come to this workshop. It was a mixed gendered session, very similar to this session right here in this room. And he did an exercise that was really, really powerful. I'm just going to demonstrate it really quickly. Some of you may have seen this already. If you have, please, you know, excuse me. I won't go through the full exercise. But I just want to give you a little taste of what I experienced that really transformed me. Really transformed me. He drew two symbols up on the board, and this board is a little small, so I'm going to have to write small as well. He wrote these two symbols up on the board, and he asked the audience what do those two symbols represent. So can anyone tell me what those two symbols represent? Anyone? Yes.
The one on the left is the male symbol.
Okay.
The right is the female symbol.
So male, female symbol. Okay. And Jackson explained what those symbols, you know, tended to be, what they represented historically. And then he asked the men in the room a question. He said, guys, what things do you do on a daily basis? On a daily basis, consciously or unconsciously, to protect yourself from being raped or sexually assaulted? So I'm going to pose a question to the men in the room. Guys, what things do you do on a daily basis? Yes.
Nothing.
Nothing. Okay. Thank you. Does anyone else have a response? Anyone? And this is a space where hopefully you feel comfortable to be honest. I'm not going to judge you. I hope no one in the room will judge you for your honesty, because this is real talk. So you say nothing, right? Okay. Well, that's exactly what happened in my workshop that morning. I looked around the room at all the other guys, wondering if they were going to say something that I didn't know about, because I knew I didn't do anything. And finally, somebody raised their hand, and they said nothing. And then he asked a question to the women in the room. He said, women, what things do you do on a daily basis, either consciously or subconsciously, to protect yourself from being raped or sexually assaulted? So I'm going to pose that to the women in the room. Yes?
Walking groups of other women, especially in the event, right?
Okay. Walking in groups, okay? Okay, thank you. Yes?
Being aware of what you're wearing in public. Of your appearance.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Yes?
Being aware of who's around you.
Okay. What do you mean? Can you elaborate?
Especially at night, if you're walking and there's someone behind you or someone next to you, you just want to kind of check them out and see if they're shooting. And protect yourself.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yes.
Pretend to be on the phone.
Okay. Tend to be on the phone. How many women in the room pretend to be on the phone when they're walking down the street? Thank you. Someone have their hand up over here? Oh, in the corner, yes, sorry, I didn't see.
Not travel with men I don't know very well alone.
Okay. Excuse my hand. I noticed that since I'm on the computer all the time now, I barely write that. My handwriting is strong. Okay. Yes.
What was I say? Sorry. Most of our fathers of women tell us to carry mace.
Okay, so you carry mace, okay? Yes.
Carry the legal length knife.
Okay. Carry knife. Did a workshop upstate New York. I believe it was in Buffalo. A woman pulled out her keychain. And on her keychain was a long, spiral, very sharp, pointed object. And she said, I use these. I said, okay. I don't think anybody's going to mess with you if they see that. Okay, what else? Yes, ma'am.
A women's self-defense course, like.
Okay. Take self-defense. Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Someone else? Yes.
Staying away from like large social situations like parties, just like not even going to them.
Okay. Don't go to parties, okay? Okay. Yes.
When you do go to parties, unless you know the people around to let you, make sure not to get drunk.
Okay. All right. I'll take a few more. I see your hand in the back, and I'll come back to you. Yes.
Never take a drink from someone I don't know.
Don't take a drink from someone you don't know. Okay, why?
Well, because there's this underlying like thought that someone might put a roofie or some kind of drug to make you not aware of your surroundings.
Can you tell everyone what a roofie is?
Yeah.
Who may not know?
Sure. A roofie is a drug that perpetrators may use to make their victims kind of subdued to their surroundings and who the person is. So they're not really in control of their own body.
Okay. Thank you very much. I was at an event with my wife, really nice event, black tie event with my wife, and we were at the reception part of the event. And so, you know, they served wine and hors d'oeuvres and, you know, and my wife and I were drinking a glass of wine, and it was time to go into the ceremony for the event. And I left my wine on a ledge. It's like a little bar area, a little ledge. And I walked away from the drink. I forgot it. So I started walking into the ballroom, and I realized that I didn't have my drink in my hand. So I said to my wife, okay, you know what? I forgot my drink back over there. Let me go get it and come back. And so I went over, got the drink, walked back over to my wife, and immediately she said, I could never do that if I was you. Excuse me. She said, I could never do what you just did. Excuse me. And immediately it hit me like, wow, you know what? I didn't even think twice about going to get my drink, right? But because my wife has to be concerned about someone slipping a roofie into her drink, you know, for her, it was unthinkable to do something like that, right? So again, it's like little things like that remind me of a certain level of male privilege that I benefit from, right? That most women don't really consider or have to consider, right? What else with party culture? How many women use the buddy system or have used the buddy system, okay? How many guys in the room, right before you go to a party, right? Tonight's Friday, isn't it?
Yeah.
All right, so tonight's Friday, right before you go to a party on campus or a club, anywhere to hang out, how many of you, right before you walk into the party, you were a group of your boys, you turn around right before you walk into the door and say, now listen, fellas, we came to this party together. We're going to leave this party together. If you see me leaving this party with some unfamiliar woman I do not know, you should stop me, man. How many guys, by a show of hands, are going to do that tonight? Just by a show of hands. I can tell you, I've never done that, ever, never in my entire lifetime. In fact, when I was in college, the goal was just the opposite, right? I mean, the goal is to leave with someone you don't really know. Let's be honest. At least to some men, maybe not all men, okay? So there's a difference in our reality. There's a difference in the way we after each other. You know, if you really think about it, men should probably have the buddy system, right? I mean, we should probably employ the buddy system more than anyone else. If you really think about it. So there's a difference in the lived realities that women experience and what men experience. How many people have ever seen this exercise before or have thought about this on some level? A lot of you? You should have told me that. Well, anyway, so I experienced this as a young man in a room with women who shared their experiences. And I saw the disparity on a board just like this. And I was blown away. Seriously. Like, I'm not really trying to use hyperbole here. I was really blown away by this because as a young man, I had never thought about this at all, not once. And as soon as I saw this exercise, it explained so much to me. Like, I had gotten into arguments with my girlfriend at the time when I was a college student about her coming to meet me after work and her not wanting to meet me after work because she would have to walk through a huge parking lot at dusk or at night in order to do that. And for me, that was nothing to walk through that parking lot. I never had to think about somebody jumping out and, you know, raping or sexually assaulting me. Maybe I had to think about being physically assaulted by another man, being mugged maybe, but I never really had to think about being raped or sexually assaulted. So this was a transformative experience for me, a transformative exercise for me. And I thought in that moment, well, you know what? I learned so much just from participating in the exercise, or observing the exercise really. I figured that I had much more to learn about myself, about gender issues, and I decided to take the opportunity. And I said to myself, I'm going to take this job. I'm going to take it for 1 year. I'm going to try it out. And if I don't like it, I'm going to stop. I'm going to do something else. That was way back in 1993. Okay? And I'm still talking about these issues. I'm still thinking about these issues. I'm still traveling around the country and engaging groups of men in fraternities, on athletic teams, all over the country, talking about these issues, in mixed gender sessions, talking about this issue. And I learned so much about myself as a man and as a person. I believe that I have become a much healthier person and a much healthier man as a result of learning about these issues. I've challenged myself, and I continue to challenge myself about attitudes that I may have that may have been deeply ingrained into me as a young boy growing up. And I've also made films that touch on gender issues. I made a film called Hip Hop Beyond Beats and Rhymes. How many people have seen Hip Hop Beyond Beats and Rhymes? Anyone? Okay, cool, very cool. Thank you very much. I made that film as a result of doing so many trainings with Jackson and by myself, talking about bystander interaction, bystander intervention, and having discussions with men, right? And so I would have these conversations with men from various racial backgrounds, and often what would come up was, you know, rap music and hip hop culture, and, you know, people would always want to lay the blame to all of the, you know, problems that we see with misogyny and violence against women on hip hop. And I was a huge hip hop fan at that time. I still listen to hip hop. Right now I'm listening to Jay-Z's Magna Carta, if anybody's curious or interested. And so I decided that I wanted to make a film that explored the representations of manhood and masculinity in rap music and hip hop culture. So I'm going to show you a couple of clips from that documentary. Oh, I thought they had the back side. I'm going to show you a couple of clips from that documentary, and then we're going to talk about it. I wanted to do another exercise, but I'm going to go to a clip from the film, and then we can just talk about my motivation behind the way that I constructed the film, how we put the film together, and talk about the impact of the film. So, are you all still with me? Yeah. Good? Okay, good. So this particular clip I'm gonna show you first is the introduction to the film. And so one of the things that I really wanted to do was to make sure that from the very first frame of the film, that I sort of hooked guys into the conversation, that I made guys sort of connect with me as the storyteller, and to use language that would resonate with a male audience. I knew that this film was going to automatically attract a female audience because it dealt with issues of violence and misogyny and sexism, homophobia and hip hop. But my mission, or I guess my challenge, was to figure out ways to engage men. How do you get men to listen? How do you get men to pay attention? How do you get men to stay with a conversation that's deconstructing hypermasculinity in American culture or in hip hop culture? So what you're going to see is my effort to try and do just that.
One thing I really want to say, and I want to make this very clear to all my viewers out there, I love hip hop. I grew up with Big Daddy Kane, the Jungle Brothers, Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul, Kwame, whoever you want to talk about in hip hop. I listen to their music, I party to their music, I listen to hip hop to this day. I sometimes feel bad for criticizing hip hop. But I guess what I'm trying to do is to get us men to just take a hard look at ourselves. We're like in this box. In order to be in that box, you have to be strong, you have to be tough, you have to have a lot of girls, you gotta have money, you gotta be a player or a pimp, you gotta be in control, you have to dominate other men, other people. If you're not any of those things, then people call you soft or weak or a pussy or a chump or a faggot, and nobody wants to be any of those things. So everybody stays inside the box. I heard Suge Knight say one time that hip hop is a man's game, and it is.
Before hip hop, men were seen in R&B, they was like very docile, you know what I mean? But when hip hop came around, it brought masculinity back into the game. Now some of it is a little misguided.
1 second we're killing each other, the next minute we're pimping hoes, we're doing everything wrong at the names.
Through rap music, I think there's an identification with some of the most stereotypical masculine standards.
Every black man that goes in the studio, he's always got two people in his head. Him, in terms of who he really is, and the thug that he feels he has to project. It's a prison for us. It's a prison that we're in. Yo, I'm this, I'm that, I'm
sitting home at the crib, watching music videos, and I was seeing video after video after video of rappers posing and posturing, throwing money at the camera, mad women around them dancing, and I was like, yo, I need to do a film that breaks all of this stuff down.
So I raised money for the video camera. Stop it there. So there are two things that I forgot to mention before I show the clip. One is that I cut my hair. Very important. I just cut my dreadlocks off. Okay. The other thing is that I got a little older. Okay. So this film, was made back in, I think we made it from 2001 to 2000 and, well, I'm not going to say that. Can anyone tell me, or guess, take a guess, at how long it took for me to make this documentary? Anyone? Anyone? Yes. 3 years? Nope.
5 years?
5 years? Wrong. I saw you here first in fairness. I'll give you a crack. Yes.
7.
7? Wrong again.
1 year.
1 year? What kind of film do you think I made?
The video got hot.
No, I hear you. I hear you. I saw your hand over here. 10 years? No, not 10. Yes.
13.
13. No, I'm 13, yes. 8 years. 8 years? This is the longest I've gone. That's in the right. How about you? A few months?
6.5.
Wrong. Yes?
20.
20? Okay. Yes. 4 years? Wrong. 9? How about we just start from 1 and just go all the way until we get it right? How about me? Yes.
Oh, well, I wasn't raising my hand, but I'll guess 12 years?
No. Yes, thank you. Give me a round of applause. 6 years, yes. It took 6 years to make this documentary film. And the film was very much inspired by my work with the MVP project. It informed, the work that I did with Jackson, traveling around the country, really informed my approach to this film. I had done so many workshops and trainings with boys and men around the country, you know, like I said earlier, across racial backgrounds, across class backgrounds. And this really sort of gave me the background and the information, and really, it gave me the ability to have conversations with men about this topic in a way that would bring out, it would reveal the ways in which we have been socially constructed or conditioned to see ourselves as men without really thinking about the ways that we have been constructed to be men in our culture. And so that particular section was really designed to kind of get underneath the hyper-masculinity or the idea that there's this association with maleness and violence. In this particular case, the use of the gun, this association, this fascination with men and guns. And not just that, but if you remember, the section ended, or at least I ended the clip, after showing the cowboy western scene, right? So one thing that I was very conscious and aware of was the racial component, the racial dynamic. I knew that because I was focusing on rap music and hip-hop culture, which is deeply black, although not exclusively black, I knew that there were going to be a lot of people who, again, were going to scapegoat hip-hop, scapegoat black men as being the source of the problem. And so throughout the documentary film, I tried to make sure that we contextualize hip-hop, that we place hip-hop within a larger context of American culture and American violence, right? Because hip-hop didn't create hyper-masculinity. Am I right about that? Yeah. Right. Hip-hop didn't create sexism or misogyny or homophobia or even the crass materialism and the crass consumption that we hear oftentimes in the music. Am I right about that? Right. So I wanted to push my audiences not only to think about the images and representations of manhood that they were seeing in rap music and hip-hop culture, but to also challenge and push my audiences to think about where these images, these representations can be found outside of the culture. So I'm going to ask people in the room, really quickly. We talk, you know, the film is about hip-hop, but outside of hip-hop, can you give me some examples of sort of a hyper-aggressive, hyper-violent masculinity that we can find in American popular culture? I saw your hand first.
The KKK.
The KKK? Oh, you went right there. You went to this far extreme. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Now, can you just, well, what made you say KKK?
Because that's kind of, when I think of hypermasculinity and this group, that's like one of the biggest ones that I think of.
They top the list on some, I guess, on some level, huh?
And history.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I guess that's up to debate. All right. Thank you. How about you?
Sports.
Sports culture? Give me some figures within sports culture.
Well, I mean, like, men are expected to be strong and tough, and, you know, just ready to basically, like, you know, football is very physical and stuff like that.
Right. So football culture, the culture that I came out of, right? That I basically grew up in, very hyper-masculine, right? The expectations are that you are supposed to be tough, right? That you are supposed to be able to endure a certain level of physical punishment and also enact some physical punishment, right? Thank you, appreciate that. Wow, so many hands, yes.
Military.
Military, okay, can you elaborate just a little bit?
I grew up in a military household. My
Okay.
father was Air Force, so being around that and always seeing like the officers are the one you have to kind of abide by, or even men in general in the military.
Okay, so military culture, right? Also a very high level of sort of hypermasculine expectations or performance in the U.S. military. So military is another source of location. Yes?
UFC.
UFC, what is the UFC?
Ultimate Fighting.
Ultimate Fighting. Can you talk about it? I don't really watch a lot of Ultimate Fighting. I can't tolerate it myself, but can you just talk about it?
Well, yeah, it's it's pretty brutal sport. It's entertaining, just like, you know, boxing or any other sport would be. There's professionals in it, but a lot of the women that are now coming into UFC are falling right into the same stereotypes as the men are in. So in order to be a woman in the UFC, you pretty much have to behave like a man.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. I see your hand behind you. I'm going to try and get to as many people as possible. Yes?
In corporate culture.
Corporate culture?
Yeah.
Okay, most people don't necessarily associate hypermasculinity. It's not something that comes to mind immediately, but can you talk about it, please?
Yeah, so in many cases, women are expected to assimilate to certain male behaviors in order to be successful, or to move up the ladder and potentially break the glass ceiling. So doing things like worrying about everything from rearing children or having to make decisions to rear children or have children or raise a family, to emotional, just being, emotions or showing emotion in the workplace.
So what about men in corporate America? How are men, what is the level of, I guess, hyper-masculine performance you see or have seen in corporate culture?
Well, I think there's a standard that has been established in corporate culture, a male standard that's been established that's attributed to leadership and success, that almost makes it the model in which anyone has to, to kind of be molded in or fall into in order to be successful.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes?
I think in the political realm is hyper-masculine because you don't see a lot of females dominating that area as well. So.
Yeah, what's going on in our U.S. government right now that's can be attributed to some level of hyper-masculine posturing? Huh?
The shutdown.
Government shutdown?
Like,
right?
nobody can compromise.
Right, this inability.
They're all very stubborn.
And it's general, when we see these images of the people who are the key figures of this debate or negotiation or lack of negotiation, what do they generally look like?
Old
white men. But men, right? I mean, typically these are male leaders, right? And of course, we could sort of dissect and deconstruct what's at the heart of this government shutdown, but we won't get too much into that. Maybe a little bit later, if we have time left over, we can talk about it, right? But yeah, so politics. Thank you. That's a great one. Thank you very much. Yes.
I've got two.
Two. Go ahead.
Religion and media.
Religion and media. Okay. So talk about religion first.
Like we can start with Adam and Eve, where Eve was the one who was that sinned, and Adam was more obedient. If we just progress on, now the wife needs to obey and honor her husband.
Right.
Also, media obviously portrays sex, self-sex, and makes women be more dumb, cute to look at than to be, powerful.
Yes. So churches, on many levels, even though there are some exceptions, can be highly patriarchal, right? All right. Okay. Who else wanted to contribute? Yes. Actually, right behind you, and then we'll come back to you.
Childhood.
Childhood?
Like in play.
Okay.
There's different aisles, there's the pink aisle and there's the boy aisle.
Yeah.
Where they have all the cool toys to play with, get to use her hands, get to use her imagination. Whereas the girl, it's be a princess or be a mom.
Oh my gosh, I have a 4-year-old daughter. Really cute, really cute. I love her to death. And I can't go to Toys R Us to try and buy her something without being like a bake set or you know, something pink or something that's nurturing or something that's really, you know, girly or feminine.
It's it's the same as the boys' toy, but it's pink. I really hate that.
Say it again?
Like it's like the
same,
same,
I see, right.
the same thing as the boys' toy, but it's
Right.
like pink
Right,
or like a more feminine color.
It's just really interesting how these toys are gendered and how early they are gendered, male and female. And if you walk down the male section, the boys section in any toy store, what do you see? What do you see mostly?
Guns.
Guns.
Toy guns.
Cars.
Cars.
Ball.
Balls.
Figures.
Huh?
Action figures.
Action figures.
Yeah.
Little cars.
Right.
Building sets. All kinds of stuff, right?
Yeah.
There's only one pink aisle usually.
Yeah, so very limited options for girls and women. It's so interesting that pink is my daughter's favorite color. Oh my goodness, it's like, we really tried very hard to make sure that nobody bought her pink stuff, pink clothes, pink shoes. She loves pink, all right? Where she got it from, I don't know. She got it from outside the home. She got it from the culture, right? 4 years old.
Or she got it because pink is a cool color.
Like the color of pink, right? No, that's true. It's a color like any other color. Men should be able and feel free enough to wear pink. I have several pink items that I wear every now and then. Okay, there's nothing wrong with the color pink. But when we talk about how gender identity is sort of formed and shaped and how that is sort of nurtured and developed over time, you know, there are a lot of people who deconstruct pink and blue in ways that are very interesting. Yes, ma'am.
I was thinking maybe in terms of major, like for education, although it is changing, there's certain majors that are still pretty much male-dominated.
Like what, for example?
Engineering.
Engineering?
Law, things of that nature.
Okay. How many, you know, men go into like early education, early elementary education, childhood education, right? Or when you go to a daycare center, how many men do you see working in the daycare center? Not many, no, but not many. Am I right about that? Right about that? Yeah, okay, yes.
Education as a whole too, like K through 12 also. Like even when you're little, they're taught to line up by boys and girls. I work in an elementary school, and the boys are over here and the girls are over here, and you know what I mean? Like that's just what they like. And I feel like sometimes when you help in classes, they don't say it, but things are excused when boys do them. And with the gun thing, I was in a class the other day, and there's a lot of little boys, and they all got in trouble because they were pretending to shoot guns at each other. Well, the girls in the class were literally pretending with the Play-Doh to make food. Not all of them, but a lot of them. You know what I mean? And I just feel like
Very interesting. Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. Thank you. I'm going to take a couple more, and then I'm going to move on. How about you? Yes.
I was going to say rock and roll music.
Okay.
Because I think rock and roll has the exact same values of money and women, and maybe not as much violence, but partying. It's almost the same as hip hop.
Yeah. I'm not a big rock and roll fan. I don't really listen to a lot of rock. But do you agree or disagree with that comment? Okay. Thank you. Yes.
Disney.
Disney. Talk about it. Oh, you said that. You want to break it down. Break down the Disney Corporation for me.
All right, so as an example, you got Beauty and the Beast. Here's this beast. And you have a beautiful woman who's like this gorgeous woman. And it's he's absolutely crazy. He's sloppy, and he is like a beast, not just physically, but in his caricature. He is a beast. And then she kisses him, and he turns to this upstanding white man that's really handsome. Yes, exactly. So it's this, if a woman just stays with the man, he'll eventually change. But in reality, that's not true.
What do you mean that's not true in reality?
Well, okay. Wow, you're bringing us some interesting questions here. But in reality, these kind of situations with domestic violence, when a woman stays in a relationship, it's going to continue to happen. It rarely ever changes for a man to stop beating or abusing his partner. And that's a true statistic. And a lot of the time, people say, oh, well, why doesn't she just leave the relationship? And it's not that easy all the time, but yet, Disney portrays that stereotype a lot.
So there's a lot of mythology, right?
Yes.
And romanticizing that goes on with patriarchy, right? And how patriarchy works and functions in relationships.
Yes.
Okay? Thank you very much. That was a really important point that you brought up. I'm glad that you mentioned that. And you stated it very well and eloquently. So I appreciate that point that you made. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm going to take these last two and then move on.
Well, I was just gonna say like, pretty much all media is a reflection of the culture.
I go to the movies, you know, every once in a while with my wife. We sit down and, you know, before the movie, there are like 10 or 12, 15, 20 trailers that come on before the movie. Have you experienced that?
Yeah.
Trailer after trailer after trailer. What do you think we see all of the time when we watch these trailers? Most of the time. Not all of the time, but most of the time. What images do you think we see, or that you see when you go to the movies?
Some sort of action.
Action, big, huge, big budget action movies, right? And usually there's some level of what?
It's mostly
male violence, mostly. There are some exceptions to that, but mostly you see these really glossy, slick advertisements for these films that are based around violence, right? And the use of the gun, right? So again, there's this association with maleness and the gun, and we just internalize these trailers, right? We just watch them. No one gets outraged. No one gets upset. No one starts to cry when they see someone shoot and kill, 10 people within a time frame of like 5 seconds, right? Even though we should, but we don't. Why is that?
It normalizes it.
Because we have become very desensitized to this level of violence, and it's become very normalized, right? We see it over and over and over and over again. Thank you very much. I think you had a point.
I was actually going to say trailers for movies, because it's usually the dominant male trying to save a damsel in distress, but for some reason women always need to be saved in movies.
Right, exactly. So that's an excellent point. Thank you very much. And so we pretty much covered that we tend to, as a culture, normalize this level of male violence in the culture, even though we shouldn't, right? But it's become so normalized. Yes.
I was just going to say, there was some focus on all the violence in movies, and if you've noticed in the last 5 years, now we attack robots, we attack zombies, we attack aliens. It's less human on human, but so that way it's acceptable violence, so it's not really affecting us. It's really an interesting shift in the movie culture.
Interesting point. I don't really go to the movies enough to actually notice that shift, but it's an interesting point. I'll try and pay attention to that moving forward. All right, I would love to take more points and questions, but I do want to move on. So I mentioned earlier in my introduction, I talked about the fact that hip-hop came up often in conversations about the level of violence in our culture, the level of violence against women in our culture, homophobia in the culture. Why do you think so many people focus on rap music and hip-hop culture if there are all these other places and spaces in our culture that have absolutely nothing to do with hip-hop, right? That we see, that we internalize, that we consume with our money and with our time, but no one really talks about it, or historically has talked about it, with the same level of scorn and disgust and anger and hostility. Anyway, yes.
They're scared of hip hop because of like racism.
Okay, they're scared of hip hop. Racism may be a factor. Yes.
They're so blatant about it in hip hop more so than in other places.
Okay, so hip hop is particularly a crass art form, right, where it's very honest and sort of in your face, over the top. It's a very over the top sense of manhood or masculinity. Okay. Anyone else want to talk about that? Anyone else want to discuss that? Yes.
Jumping on the racism piece, I feel like the system of white supremacy needs the American fear of black men, black male bodies, so that we can incarcerate them and have cheap labor.
Okay. very powerful point. Thank you very much. I appreciate your honesty in that response. Yes?
Yeah, and by extension, it also lets white men have a scapegoat, right?
What do you mean by that?
I mean, white men can say, it's not me. I'm not doing it. It's those other guys, it's those brown guys, it's those black guys. It's not me. You know, I have heard, and this is something I actually say a lot, that I hear a lot of white guys say, yeah, hip hop is sexist, but man, the Rolling Stones, they're awesome. If you listen to the Rolling Stones, it's just as hateful towards women as hip hop, any hip hop song is. Their entire body of work. Just like this, it's not me. It's those other guys that were already kind of trained to hate. So let's keep hating them because they're gonna get you, white women, right? They're the ones that are going to be afraid of it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes? Okay, hip hop is a very prevalent part of our culture. It's a big part of youth culture, okay? And it's global, right? And it makes a lot of money, right? And there are a lot of people who are consuming it, buying it, listening to it, participating in it, emulating various aspects of the culture, right? So that is also a part of it. Okay, and hip hop transcends race, it transcends culture, all right? So there are a lot of different reasons why people zero in on hip hop. I think many of the things you all hit right on the head, and that's great. Let me just make this point. One of the things that I was concerned about in making the film was that my film was going to reinforce certain negative stereotypes about African American men, okay, as being the primary problem, as being, you know, the people who are the most violent or the most dangerous or the most criminalized, okay? And so if you watch the film, and many of you have seen the film, it's one of the reasons why in every single segment of the documentary, I tried to place it within the context of the larger culture. But what happens is that when I show the film in some places, especially when the audience is predominantly white, I think it does sort of give, you know, audiences a pass to not really think introspectively about how these images affect you, or places where you experience or see the same level of hyperviolence or misogyny or sexism or homophobia, right? But it doesn't get addressed because, like you mentioned, white masculinity on some level gets a pass, but Michael Kimmel addresses that very well in his work, right? So, with that in mind, I want to show you another clip, okay, from the film. And just bear with me as I try and get to the clip, actually. Are you all okay? Yeah. You hanging in there? Yeah. Everything good? All right. So this section is called Manhood in a Bottle. And for me, the section Manhood in a Bottle really gets to, in my opinion, the heart of the issue in this way. When I set out to make this film, I set out to remove the veil from a lot of rap artists who were performing a certain kind of masculinity, because as an African American man who grew up with the music and saw the art form shift and evolve from being, you know, relatively like party music to being sort of battle music, you know, sort of MC battle music, to being really socially conscious and political, right? At its height during the golden era, all right, between the years of like 1986 or 1985 and 1990, right? There was like this huge sort of influx of political commentary, you know, where African American male rappers and female rappers were talking about real issues that affected the African American community. They were confronting white supremacy, confronting white racism, talking very proudly about black culture and about the importance of education and reading and knowledge of self and, you know, understanding the 5 elements of hip hop. And then all of a sudden it began to shift. Does anybody remember that? Oh, yeah. Anybody old enough in here to remember when hip hop began to shift? Right. Somewhere between 1989-ish to well, until today, really. Okay? After hip hop became much more consumable, when huge corporations realized that they could make millions, billions of dollars by selling this art form globally around the world, I started to notice a shift that the images and the representations of black masculinity and as well as black femininity were becoming much more limited, much more narrow, right? The full range of black masculinity in hip hop was no longer being expressed. So as a young man, as I grew up listening to artists and groups like Tribe Called Quest, Big Daddy Kane, who I'm going to see on Saturday, by the way. KRS-One, Poor Righteous Teachers, De La Soul, Leaders of the New School, Eric B. and Rakim, all of these different artists. You talk about MC Lyte, Queen Latifah, who you calling a bitch, right? All of a sudden, the music began to really shift. It became much more hyper-aggressive, much more criminalistic, really, much more materialistic.
It's like the gangster stereotype.
Right, so all these gangster street stories were now becoming the dominant theme in rap music and hip-hop culture. And I would sit down and I would watch BET on a Saturday morning, The Basement, Rap City, and I would watch music videos and I would see this monolithic image of black masculinity and black femininity on my screen. And I would go, wow, these images, they're all the same. The songs are different, the artists are different, but the representations of women and black men, they're very stereotypical. It's all the same stuff. And lyrically, the themes were all similar. And they didn't represent, in my opinion, a healthy masculinity at all. And so, again, I wanted to get underneath this. So you saw the scene where I was down in Daytona Beach in the previous clip, where I was talking to, well, actually the rappers rhymed on camera. They just sort of gave me these sort of, freestyle rhymes on camera. And all you heard were these African-American men talking about shooting somebody, or killing somebody, or selling drugs, all that kind of stuff. I had conducted several of these interviews on the street, walking up to random hip-hop artists or aspiring rap artists, asking them what they rhyme about. I never told them what to rhyme about. I never told them, I want you to rhyme, give me your hardest, your most gangster, your most drug-dealingest stories that you can rhyme about on camera. I did not prompt them. I didn't say, I want you to talk about being a black man. I never said any of that. But on cue, I was hearing the same things over and over and over again. And so finally, I met up with a group of guys in New York City at a hip-hop conference, and they rhymed for me on camera, and I decided to challenge them about the lyrics that they were rhyming about.
Black manhood, by the structures and the powers that be, the corporations, they found a way that they think they could put soul in the bottle. If they can put soul in the bottle, then they can put manhood in the bottle, and then show the bottle and advertise it. And you can follow the crumbs to the big bad wolf.
I decided to follow the crumbs and ended up here at this Hip Hop Power Summit held in New York City. The summit was hosted by Power 105.1 FM. A radio station owned by media powerhouse Clear Channel Communications. There were hundreds of young black men and women here seeking pointers from hip-hop moguls like Russell Simmons, Irv Gotti, and BET executive Stephen Hill. Outside were dozens of aspiring rap artists handing out CDs and demos, hoping to get attention from anyone who would listen.
Listen, these niggas don't know who I am. It's crack, the drug dealer, car dealer, what's the deal? I'm the dealer, man. I can deal your hand, milligrams to kilograms. Where I'm from, Cypress Hill, I can just kill a man. Call me nice when I'm smoothed out. Even without the dick, I bitches loving the beat. Bring beef down back 11s like the WB. Got thug rappers that can't get over their rhymes. Some niggas quit on their slugs, my guns cocking overtime. I make hate songs, spit to your face gone. Life's a bitch, and I'm trying to get my rape on. Man, I ain't leaving the party until the cake gone. Get your balloon pop, nigga, I bang strong.
niggas screaming out agony cause they chickens is after me. Stop with the crying, see I murder you like Master P. I pack big guns to hit all of y'all faggots. I ain't nice, but I'm on the bus, so I'm still mad at me.
Everywhere I go, and I've been shooting this documentary for like 2 years now, you know what I'm saying? And every time I have kids spit for me, you know what I'm saying? It's all about the same thing. It's all about how you gonna kill somebody, how you gonna, how you gonna rape somebody.
I could walk up to you right now and say, yo, could have been a doctor, or I could have been a pops. Wonder what would have happened had I would have been a cop. Would I help the block, protect the good from the bad, or just be killing niggas cause the power on my badge? You know what I mean? That's nice, but nobody wanna hear that right now. They don't accept that shit. They don't accept it. Straight. They usually don't give us deals when we speak righteously and things of that nature. You know, they think we don't wanna hear that.
How many cats just stood here in front of me right now and started talking about how much drugs they sold? You know what I'm saying? How they will kill you, why they will shoot you.
Okay, now look, wait, they said that. How many MCs do you see in the industry on TV now talking something positive? How many? None. They're doing it because they say, I want to get there. They're going to do whatever we can do to get there. That's what it is.
I think when you're talking to a lot of these young rappers, the most important things for them is to get a record deal. And what they're hearing from the record companies is that there are only certain examples of blackness that we're going to let flow through this space. And when it comes to hip hop, there's certain conventions in which we want to see. We want to see kind of the hardcore thug performing hip hop. We want to see booty shaking in the background. And when hip hop videos don't fit into those conventions, they don't get played.
When I think about what we call the golden era from like 87 to 92, you know, you had LL Cool J, you had NWA, you had Poguini, but you had De La Soul, you had Kwame, you know what I'm saying? And so you had a diversity of black male expression. And so if you wasn't with Chuck D, you can get with De La Soul if you're a bohemian. If you wasn't with them, you can get with Kwame, you can get with Tribe Called Quest, you can get with, Jungle Brothers, you know what I'm saying? So there's so many different types.
The current images out there of black and Latino men in hip hop, right? Do y'all feel like y'all want y'all sons to be like that? No. I mean, maybe some aspects of business, being entrepreneur, being walking.
They don't see that aspect on TV. They don't see that this is a deal with with a person at a company. They see 50 Cent on TV with his vest on. Yeah. They see him with his gat on his waist. That's what they see. Because they don't, the media doesn't want to portray us, minority people with, they don't want you to see that we good fathers. They don't want you to see that we good businessmen. We don't just sell drugs. I sold water last summer. Holla!
That emerges among these young men, then you get this kind of notion of keep it real. And of course they have to keep it real to sell records. But at the same time, when someone actually pulls their coat, it's like, okay, this isn't really you. What's this about? It's an admission that that's a performance.
When Self-Destruction by KRS-One came out, we was all pumping it and loving it.
I just heard that the other day.
You know what I'm saying? Loving it.
Ourselves together so that you can unite and fight for what's right.
But now, you can't go to a label with Self-Destruction. Why? Because you're going to self-destruct. The label's not going to put you out there. They're not going to do it.
Self-destruction. Never self-destruction.
Nobody want to hear that shit no more. Soon as 50 comes in, he's killing up shit, he's selling out the roof. He's not got one kind of suit.
About other cultures and wanting to know more about something that we'll never probably experience.
Does it reinforce stereotypes about
Yeah. It does. Especially if they talk about growing up poor and never having all this money, and then they come on MTV or VH1 with their large chains and their nice cars, and they sing a song about busting taps on people.
If you really want to know where this kind of, predatory black man comes from, look back at films like Birth of a Nation.
Birth of a Nation is hailed by critics as a cinematic breakthrough in a great American movie. But D.W. Griffith's blockbuster, made in 1915, spread fear and paranoia about black masculinity with its mean-spirited stereotypes of black men as lazy, untrustworthy, oversexed, and dangerous, particularly to white women, and gave rise to the Ku Klux Klan.
If the KKK was smart enough, they would have created gangster rap, because it's such a caricature of black masculinity, yet young people of color are being presented with this idea that somehow these people represent us and they're cool and they're gonna stand in for us against the white power structure, while they're completely subservient to that white power structure. It's really an ironic, sad reality.
I asked BET executive Stephen Hill about reinforcing stereotypes, but he just passed the buck.
Probably
should happen is you should look at people who are actually making the videos. We are, in some ways, partly a video channel, and we play the videos that are
So, as an African American man, how do you feel about what you see? I mean,
He just walked away without answering my question.
Okay, I'm gonna stop it there. There's so much going on in the scene. What I really attempted to do was try and get underneath the performance of masculinity, right? This idea that, you know, same things we've been talking about earlier, that men tend to perform or act in ways that they believe they are expected to act and behave and perform, right? So at the very beginning of the scene where I talk to the rappers that are on the street, I think that's one of the most, to me, in my opinion, someone who made the film, to me, that's one of the most important and most revealing scenes in the film, right? Because we were able to, through conversation, right? Through conversation, analyze, deconstruct, and get underneath that performance. Did you see that? You remember seeing that? You know, I mean, the guy actually acknowledged, I didn't sell drugs last time, I sold water. How? I mean, I thought that was a really deep and poignant moment that these men, these African-American men, were actually revealing to me and to you, the audience, that a lot of what they were doing is not really real. It's just a performance, right? Okay? But then why is it that they feel the need that they have to perform in that way? Why? What is it about the culture, the corporate culture, that controls, that drives the ship in the hip-hop industry, that gets them, that sort of forces them into this box where they have to perform this way, right? And so it's like, they knew and they understood that in order for them to be recognized, acknowledged, to maybe get a record deal, to be seen as a bona fide, credible, heterosexual male rapper, that they had to rhyme about certain things. It was like they had two sets of rhymes. They had a set of rhymes in this pocket. They had a set of rhymes in this pocket. And in this pocket were all of the really hyper-aggressive, hyper-violent, sexist, homophobic rhymes that they knew may give them entree to fame, money, respect, credibility, street credibility, all those different things. And in this pocket were like, people give you their business card. They say, this is my job, right? This is like my 9 to 5, but this is my passion, right? Like in this pocket, it was like these are the rhymes that they were most passionate about, right? That they probably wanted to rhyme more about, but just didn't feel like they had the freedom to rhyme about because they didn't feel like that side of them, that side of their masculinity was going to be socially accepted. I thought that was really interesting. So there is this performance of masculinity that those rappers bought into and that I believe many men buy into across racial lines. How many people in this room know of guys that are walking around Grand Valley State University like they're holding down the campus? Right? Right? Like they're big and they're bad and they're tough, right? But that may not really be who they really are. So this hyper-masculine culture that we are indoctrinated into doesn't really allow us to be who we really are, doesn't allow us to be fully expressive. You know, to embrace a more human side of ourselves, to embrace our human qualities. It limits us, it hurts us, and it also prevents so many guys from actually speaking out against violence, speaking out against violence against women, confronting homophobia, right? Because if, a real man is supposed to be straight, right? He's supposed to be in control, he's supposed to be tough, he's supposed to be impenetrable, he's not supposed to cry, not to be vulnerable, he's supposed to be the pillar of strength. Most men are taught and trained to be these things. And if you're not those things, then what are you called? The P word. Soft. Weak. The F word.
I like a lot of these all of these words that you would refer to a man that's not strong are like words that we use to refer to women also.
Yes, right. So these are also words that we use to refer to women and to actually dehumanize women.
Right.
Right? So all these words are used to control us, basically. I mean, we control ourselves, the culture controls us. You know, these are social controls that are very powerful that dictates male behavior. Okay? And I think it's important for us as men to think about, to acknowledge publicly, right? To talk about, because we don't really get an opportunity to talk about it, call it for what it really is. I think it's also very important for women, the women in this room, to hear this, to be a part of this conversation, because it may help explain away some of the men in your life, your father, your husband, your boyfriend, male friend, who just continues to act out in ways that you just can't fully understand. The culture that boys and men grow up in is very, very powerful, very powerful. And it informs and it dictates how we act and treat other people. And in my opinion, and it's just my humble opinion, I think it's very unhealthy. It sets us up for so much disappointment and failure, because who can really live up to that all the time? Who could be all of those things all of the time? And if you have to walk around feeling like you're tough and strong, and you can't express your emotions, you can't cry, what does that lead to? What are some of the negative consequences that are associated with this hypermasculinity? Yes?
Us men, we know this. We know you can't step out of the man box. Do women know this? That's just a question I have. Do women know that we can't step out of the man box or we get penalized?
Well, that's why we're doing this right now. I mean, you know,
well, I'm just curious if they know that innately or not. It seems obvious to me.
All right, so let's run with that for a second. What are your feelings about this? To some of the women in the room, do you recognize this as an issue? I'm sure that they do. Right? But would you like to talk about it a little bit?
I know men I've dated in the past are different when I'm with them and then when we're with other people. So I know that box is gone when we're together, but when we're with other people, that box comes back into play.
Okay, yes, I'll take a few more, and we're going to try and keep things moving because I want to end on time. Yes?
With like what he said, like, do women like realize that they have to hold up a standard? Like, I mean, yeah, like guys act different on their guy friends sometimes, but when they are with like their female friends or their girlfriend, like they do open up differently. But I don't think that based on our culture that boys and men should like have to be so powerful where they can't show sensitivity and stuff, because basically they just like it makes a woman feel uncomfortable if they can't show that they actually have like a real side of them, whether we're able to take them seriously or not. Because you like if they act different in front of their male friends and then they act different in front of us, it's like, well, who's your real man? Like what's your real personality?
Gotcha, yes.
I've met women say that they want men who are like in touch with their emotions, and then they friend zone them and only date guys.
Okay, that's another interesting point. That takes us down a different path. Okay, let me just ask this question really quick, all right? And it's great that everybody wants to talk. But let me ask this question. Okay, so we talked about the things that men have to do. We talked about the things that men are called if they don't prescribe to some of the social norms of what a man is supposed to be, right? How many guys in the room, let's just be honest, how many guys in the room have referred to another man as the B word or the F word, bitch or faggot, if he was outside of the box? How many guys in the room have actually heard another male refer to another male as a bitch or something less than a man? How many guys? Just by show of hands. I have. How many guys in the room have actually called another man a bitch or the F word or something to disparage his manhood and masculinity? Be honest. I have. Okay, how many women in the room have heard other women refer to men as the B word or soft or he ain't a real man or whatever? How many women? Okay? How many women have actually said this themselves? How many of you have said it yourselves? Right? Referred to men as being soft or weak or not a real man. So we're all kind of guilty, aren't we? right? We have all been socialized and conditioned to see men in very narrow and limited ways, right? And so this is what we have to confront. This is what we have to challenge within ourselves, especially if we're going to be doing this work, especially if we're going to be educating and training others, especially if we're going to be breaking new ground and trying to create and establish new gender norms and expectations that are healthier, right? And let's talk about some of those negative consequences. Let's just come up with a list real quick. What are some of the consequences of men who, you know, if they don't live up to this expectation, what happens? Let's come up with a list of things that can happen. Yes, I saw your hand. You've been patiently waiting.
No problem. Maybe like health problems, like they'll die of heart disease or die early because like they're stressing about meeting these standards.
Okay, so you can become unhealthy physically, okay? It could lead to fatal disease or life-threatening disease, okay? Yes?
Like drug and alcohol use.
Drug and alcohol, so you may self-medicate.
Like, because they're alienated from who they really are.
Okay, so they're not, they're alienated. They feel disappointments. They self-medicate, okay? Yes?
Women have an added burden of managing their emotions.
Okay, so you feel burdened by having to, you know, project this masculinity all the time, right? Is that what you're saying? Say it again, please.
There's an expectation
Yes.
of women to manage their emotions. Manage emotions.
To manage men's emotions. Okay, cool. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. It's so funny. I've never had anyone actually knit while I was
I'm crocheting.
crocheting. That's a little variety. No. I wasn't questioning whether or not you were paying attention. It's really interesting. Okay, let's go over a few more. Yes.
They become hypermasculine or sexually aggressive.
Okay, so they could become, you know, misogynistic. They could become rapists.
Yeah.
Right? They could assault women. Okay? Yes.
I think a lot of times if they feel like they can't express certain emotions, like be sensitive or sad, is going to come out in different ways with anger, depression.
Right, because we don't really have the resources and we haven't been trained to express ourselves as men. Many men, I don't want to generalize and say all men, but a lot of men haven't really been given permission to be expressive in terms of our emotion. So we express ourselves through violence or anger or rage or what have you, right? We have plenty of examples of that, don't we, in our culture? Where we see someone take a gun, go to a school, right? Shoot 10, 12, 13 people and then shoot himself. Okay? We see it more and more. And even that has become a little bit normalized, unfortunately, in our culture, right? So we see examples of that. We see examples of mayors and people in high-profile positions who abuse their status and their power and they sexually assault the women on their staff or women in their life, right? So we see plenty of examples of these negative consequences, don't we? So this is real. This is not stuff that we're talking about that's not practical. This is stuff that happens every single day all over the country. Other people, yes, in the back. Prison, can you just talk about that a little bit?
Well, kind of like what you discussed, like they not only are accused on an everyday basis to defend themselves, but then it manifests into behavior. So like you said, turning into rapists, perpetrators, getting a gun.
Right, exactly, right. So how many men are in prison right now, jail or prison, because they were afraid to back down from some senseless confrontation, right, that could have been prevented or avoided, but because they felt like their manhood was on display and in question, that they had to perform or they were going to lose the respect of their male peers. They were going to lose their man card, right? Has anybody seen the documentary film? It was on ESPN, the 30 for 30 film. It was about a basketball player, legendary basketball player in Chicago. What was his name? Benji, all right? So it was a basketball player in Chicago, high school basketball player, legendary high school basketball player. He was one of the top basketball players in the nation, okay? And the story goes that he got into a confrontation with some guys on the street, okay? And he bumped into one of the guys on the street. The other guy pulled out a gun, shot him, killed him, right? 2 young men shot this really popular high school basketball player, killed him, right? 2 young men went to prison for a very long time. Basketball player, dead. What I thought was the most interesting thing that I heard is the young man who actually pulled the trigger talked about his decision to pull the trigger. You remember that? He talked about the fact that his father told him. Say it again? His father told him, do not let anybody do anything to you, and if you pull out your gun, don't pull out your gun unless you use it. If you pull out your gun, use the gun. Horrible, in my opinion now, okay? Horrible advice. This is a poor example of male leadership, right? This is a poor example of training men how to be nonviolent. Now, on some level, we have to talk about communities where there are high levels of violence, right? Where crime is a factor, where people have to survive in ways that are, crucial, to their existence, okay? I recognize that, I understand that, but we have to change that reality. We really do. As difficult as it is, we have to change that reality because it's not healthy, it's not creating vital communities, and, people are losing their lives. So, again, we're talking about trying to deconstruct these things so that we can build and redefine and create a healthy manhood and masculinity. All right? So that is what the scene was designed to do. Now I want to show you a couple more really short clips. All right? Now these clips are, what you're going to see now are, this is original footage from the shooting of Beyond Beats and Rhymes that did not make it into the final version of the film. All right? They hit the cutting room floor. But my editor and I recently got together and we repurposed this footage and used contemporary images from today's hip-hop culture over footage that I shot like 6 years ago, okay? So I'm gonna go to, this particular clip is gonna focus on, I'm sorry. Yeah, Jamal screwed me up. I'm playing.
Yeah, you might want to try a different browser.
Let's shoot the pussies from a block away. Don't test me, don't test her. I'll rape you like Chester. I'm a rich ass nigga, you a bitch ass nigga.
The question to me is like, why do black men feel the need to tear each other down? In terms of their sexuality. You know what I mean? I think again because black men feel either consciously or subconsciously a certain level of oppression. We feel the only way we can be powerful is to tear someone else down, either each other or black women. That's the truth.
All right, so that is a segment on homophobia that was designed to initiate conversations about homophobia in hip-hop, the intense level of homophobia in hip-hop. And I want to show this very last clip. We're running out of time, but I want to get to this clip. I want to make sure I get to this clip. I hope that I don't screw anything up here. But I want to get to this clip, and then we can sort of collapse the 2 last clips into one final conversation, and then we can go to lunch, okay?
Not me.
In 2006, I released my film, Hip Hop Beyond Beats and Rhymes, a documentary that challenged the violence, misogyny, and homophobia in mainstream hip hop. 7 years later, the look, the sound, and many of the artists who create hip hop have changed. But what about the themes and imagery of hip hop? I decided to dust off my original footage and release some never seen before clips, and let you decide for yourself.
I play your Hampton house, I take your Hampton spouse, came on a Hampton blouse, and then a Hampton mouth.
The bitch to on my dick that she has to be a knife. Slap her, but she like it, tell me master, give me pipe.
I won't pass the weed, but I'll pass the bitch. Mastermind, the bitch stole the dick, stuck me up and then hit a leg. Retaliated, had to bust off quick.
Not unlike the rest of American culture, hip-hop has always had its issues with misogyny. This is, again, a reflection of the larger culture. I think that there's a huge connection that people are ignoring if they try to suggest that misogyny or any of these other sort of social problems are rooted in hip-hop.
Founder of the very popular Bikram Yoga empire, facing trouble over allegations of sexual harassment.
For Patty Manicero, working for her male bosses at Four Amigos Travel was living a nightmare of daily harassment.
Another day, another sexual harassment claim against San Diego Mayor Bob Filner.
It's not like hip-hop is some sleeping giant on a mountain. Hip-hop's going to follow the people. Music has always followed the people. The music, art has always followed the people. The music and the art in the 60s is the way it is because of what the people demanded. And right now, this is what people is demanding.
Now when you're out there and they put that D on you, take that D. Take that D like the champions that you are.
I thought it was very interesting as I got older to try to interrogate the music that I was listening to and figure out why it seemed to attack me and other women so much. And that's when I started to figure out the marketing going on and really what was American culture and American values infecting hip-hop music through its commercialization.
I died over these Reeboks. You ain't even know it. Put Molly all in her champagne. She ain't even know it. I took her home and I enjoyed that. She ain't even know it.
People are set to picket outside Reebok today, demanding that they fire rapper Rick Ross.
I don't think it's about censorship. You have the right to put out what you put out, and we have the responsibility and right to hold you accountable for what you put out.
It was a misunderstanding with a lyric, a misinterpretation where, the term rape wasn't used, and, I would never use the term rape.
Sportswear company Reebok is dropping rapper Rick Ross.
I know that there's negativity in our experience. But the truth is the negativity in our experience is such a small percentage of black life. I challenge the rappers. They say I'm from the hood, black males in rap. Therefore I have to have this image because I had it hard. And I show them Boogie Washington wasn't from the hood, he was from the plantation. And he came up from slavery and built a college.
She coming up trying to catch breath, I grab a weed like stay down, just breathe out. Breathe out.
If you got a problem with it and you're going to say something about it, turn it off and do the work and the investigation to find the type of shit you do like. Because it is out there. Because too many people say we don't like what's playing on the radio, we don't like what's playing on TV, and don't do the legwork to find nothing different. And then end up accepting and singing the same songs and saying they don't like it.
People don't want to check each other anymore. Like, they don't want to say, yo, homeboy is wrong. You're wrong. Nobody wants to say you're wrong anymore. People want to be like, well, that's that man. Who am I to knock that man for doing what he's doing?
I'm trying to keep it alive and not compromise the feel that we love. You're trying to keep it defined and only co-sign with radio does. And I'm in the right pasture.
You're the first person I've seen that a rapper in recent times that said anything against Molly. And at the end it says, death to Molly. Why did you decide to do that?
Certain artists, portraying these trends and don't really have that lifestyle. And then it gives off the wrong thing. And it becomes kind of corny after a while.
Okay, that's the last clip. Thank you so much for bearing with me through the technical challenges. We could talk all afternoon, and we will be talking all afternoon about these issues. But I want to end because I don't want to take up too much time and throw the whole entire schedule off. But I just want to end by saying that I do the work that I do because I do want to make a difference. And I've chosen film, documentary filmmaking, as my tool and as my platform to educate and to inspire and to create discussion, to get people to talk. I believe that through discussion and dialogue, we can raise a lot of awareness. And we can get people to think critically in ways that they may not have thought critically before. I believe that media literacy is very important. I think that we have to teach our society and our culture, particularly our young men and boys, as well as our girls and women, to decode and deconstruct what it is that they are internalizing every single day via the media, so that they can begin to understand what these messages are around gender identity, because I think media is a big part of the problem. And I also think that every single person in this room has the ability to create social change in this area. You don't have to be a filmmaker like me, you don't have to be an author like Michael Kimmel. You can find your voice and figure out your place in the world and how you can make a difference, how you can confront patriarchy, how you can confront hypermasculinity, how you can confront misogyny and homophobia, using your voice, using your tools, speaking to or addressing the people in your community on this campus in ways that work for you, in ways that you are most effective. And so I want to encourage every single person in this room to accept the challenge, like I accepted the challenge 20 years ago from Jackson Katz, to make a difference in the world, to be a leader on this issue, to stand up, to confront, to challenge, to not accept, to go against the grain, to encourage and give people permission to go against the grain, to be supportive, to program workshops and bring in speakers who can help further the conversation and the dialogue on this campus, so that the men who come onto this campus realize and understand that there's a certain expectation, right? That violence against women is not going to be accepted or tolerated, that homophobia is not going to be accepted or tolerated, that they don't have to perform a certain kind of masculinity in order to be accepted by other men in their peer group. To also create a space where women are safe on campus, where they don't have to worry about walking down the street or walking on campus and being sexually assaulted or being raped. These are lofty ideas, but the people in this room have the ability to transform the culture of this university if you haven't already been doing it. I'm sure that many of you are already doing it. You're doing it right now by having this conference. But I just want to encourage everyone to continue and to move forward, even when you feel like you're hitting your head up against the wall, nobody's paying attention, you're not making a difference, you don't see immediate results. And understand that any social change takes time, doesn't happen overnight, but that you can lay the foundation and that you can be a part of the solution. So I want to encourage you to find your voice, figure out what you can add to the conversation, figure out how you can be a part of the solution. I believe that everyone has the ability to do that. So thank you all very much, and I look forward to talking to you more throughout the day. I'll be on a panel discussion later on this afternoon, and I'll be around if you have any questions. I regret that we didn't have enough time for a Q&A session, but I will be here for the most part of the day. So thank you very much, and continue to do what you do. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Grand Valley, again, I would like to thank Mr. Hurt for coming out here and sharing. On the tables, there's evaluations. If you guys could take the time to fill those out, you can leave them right there. I'll go around